Hello, and thank you to the organizers for the wonderful invitation. I want to share a daring vision and project for bringing about system change on this planet and for catalyzing the creation of a new global culture. And before going into that specifically, I would like to look at where we are as humanity right now. We have entered what many people call the information age. Tapping into the power of information, the digital revolution has transformed the face of the world in a very short time. Whether it is connecting the world through communication systems, whether it is creating ever new material realities from virtual space, whether it is artificial intelligence, genetic modification, there seems to be no limit to what is possible anymore, reaching all the way to colonizing Mars, to making physical death obsolete. This is what one part of humanity is thinking about that has gotten into the power of information. Yet paradoxically, on the other side of the planet, we face a kind of suffering of billions of creatures. We face an ecological crisis that is unprecedented. We face the prospect or the possibility that human race will get extinct in this century due to its own activity, and of this whole political system, economic system that we are living in to collapse within the next 20 years. And so what I would like to get into is the question, isn't it possible to combine the space of infinite possibility that is opening up through the information age, through looking into this potential of creating new realities and putting it at service for relieving worldwide suffering, in fact, of turning war obsolete and creating a new planetary culture? What if the digital revolution is just a precursor for the real revolution that is to emerge from the inside, what the information age is about? And here I'm not talking about innovation, I'm talking about creating a new foundation for our civilization. And to get there, we have to look at what is information, because this is not just a technical or mathematical term, but if we understand information, we are actually getting the key into our hand for how the universe works. Understanding information, we see the very secret for how we as humanity can participate in the process of creating reality and fundamentally transforming our world. Ever since the DNA was decodified, we know that all our psychological and physiological makeup is determined by information. In a way, we are information. Our material world is determined, is shaped by a mysterious, actually not definable, non-material agent, information. It is the thing that puts energy, vibration into a form that then appears to us to be material. In fact, physicists trying to find the basic component of our material world have zoomed into the atom more and more and more, trying to find that fundamental particle, and what they found was vibrating energy being shaped, being organized by information. And so this insight has a fundamental effect on how we see the world, what is possible and what is not. Because we come to the understanding that what we do in our lives, whether we are healthy or whether we are sick, whether we create a planet of war or one of peace, whether we turn nature into deserts or whether we steward it as paradise, it depends on the information that we follow. And when we look at human civilization nowadays, or also for the past centuries and millennia, then we see that we have followed an information matrix of violence and destruction, leading to famine, leading to wars, leading to this ecological mega crisis that is threatening our own survival. In the 1990s, a group of American activists visited the Amazon rainforest in Ecuador. They were visiting an indigenous tribe that had actually not been much in contact with Western civilization at all, but they were facing an oil company getting closer and closer to their tribe, threatening to destroy the forest and their community. Basically, it was a struggle for life and death. And the activists asked the indigenous people, what can we do? How can we help you to survive? And the elders of the tribe replied, do not come here to help us. Go back to your civilization, go back to your country and change the dream of your culture. And what I would like to present here or to say is that no matter at which part of this planetary crisis we look at, whether it is climate change, whether it is the fact that we are emptying the oceans from fish and fill it with trash, whether it is this unprecedented level of how we are making species extinct, but also whether it is the extreme social inequality, the record number of refugees, those are not separate individual crises that we can tackle going one at them. Those are merely symptoms of a much more profound disease. And unless we are looking at this underlying disease, we are not going to come up with a solution in any of these specific crises at all. And the indigenous people said, change the dream of your civilization. What is a dream? Actually, the dream is another form of saying what I described as information before. It is a dynamically evolving collective process of imagination in which we all participate in. So imagine that there is a blueprint that we cannot see for how we live, for how we see the world, for how we relate to each other. And this is a process of imagination. What we imagine is what informs the society we create. The tricky thing is that we imagine something that then turns into reality that seems to be so firm to us that we are not even realizing that the society we are seeing on the outside is the product of our own imagination. And the dream of our world has been informed by a history of violence, by a history of fight against community, against trust, against love. For the past 5 millennia, humanity has been living in a regime where actually always when a person would reveal their true nature, their true erotic nature and their true spiritual nature, they would end up, in most of the times, burning at the stake or being nailed to a cross. The essence of humanity needed to be broken so that people would obey to the empires. And this has been repeating over and over and over again, and it's still the basis of our societies today. And because that experience of pain was so horrible collectively, people began to turn away from that which they had originally loved. Even more so, they started to hate what they originally loved the most and fight against people expressing it. And so the dream of our civilization is based on that schizophrenic structure where on one side we desire something, but on the other hand we destroy the very thing that gives life to us, that we need and that we love. Now imagine there would be a few places on earth where this collective trauma this hypnosis of fear and violence covering our planet would be broken. Places where people would engage in experimenting radically new kinds of coexistence, where they would research in all the areas what a new dream of human life on Earth would look like. Even very tiny in size compared to the mega systems of global capitalism and how people live, the military-industrial complex, even though those would be very tiny places, such centers could inspire a process of global change because they would radically widen the horizon of collective imagination. And this is what I want to present here, because this was the vision in mind that led rise to the Healing Biotopes plan, which is a work that has been going on for 40 years and that led to the creation of the Tamera Peace Research Center in the south of this country 20 years ago. And the basic idea of Tamera is the main research question is, how does people need to live together? How do people and animals, people and nature need to coexist so that their coexistence does no longer give rise to violence and fear, but to trust and solidarity? The founders of the project saw that unless we create real new life structures, social structures, economic structures, spiritual structures, sexual structures, political structures that lead to sustainable trust between people, all the ideals of peace and sustainability would not be more than just pipe dreams. They fail due to the structures of how people live together on a daily basis. And I want you to imagine this for a moment. A life, a system of society based on trust. And trust is a word that's used often, but it is a very rare thing in this world. It is the state where you can fully show yourself to another human being, where you know that you are accepted as who you are. Maybe this is a moment you experience in a short time with an intimate friend. Imagine trust being the relation of our economy, the relation of our love relationships. Then you see what a fundamentally different world we live in if that were the basis of our coexistence. And we saw when we actually do that, when we create structures of coexistence where trust can arise between people, then we see that the possibility of a world, of a non-violent world, is much more than just a fantasy. It is not just a youthful dream, a hippie dream. It is something where we touch the basis of life, where we know this is how human life is meant to be. We as a species are not here to kill and exploit each other, to betray one another, to compete. We are here for love, for trust, for joy. And doing this research into what a post-capitalist world can look like, skip forward, we saw that when people coexist in solidarity, when they share a common goal, when they can actually show themselves to one another without masks, then people that hadn't known each other before, finding themselves in community, do everything to support each other. We've seen how children growing up in trust, learning in a way that they can follow their intrinsic motivation instead of getting into a system determined by the pressure of performance and competition, those children develop into compassionate, autonomously thinking, caring human beings. We've seen that when we, as people, stop our occult ideas of hostility, wild animals approach us with infinite gratitude. In fact, vermin and animals that we see as nuisance, such as rats or wild boars respect the information that we put out, and they become collaboration partners in creating a peace culture. I know it sounds like a dream, but it's actually an experience we are having. We've seen that when we cooperate with the principles of nature, when we see the cycles of nature and support them, a desert area that is a landscape that is drying out can turn into a fertile paradise again. Let me find a picture. Can turn into a fertile paradise within a very short time when the rainwater that falls on the land can be received by the earth body. Then within a few years, this landscape turns into paradise. So this was Tamera before we started with the water retention landscape, and this is Tamera afterwards. And we also see that when people live together in true trust, then new images for love emerge in their coexistence. Then you no longer have an image of love that is based on possessiveness and fear. You have an image of love determined by sharing, by mutual support, by solidarity. And in fact, our longing for intimacy on the one hand and free erotic expression on the other are no longer contradictory. I see I'm running out of time, but I would still like to say that water and love are the two core areas of this upcoming revolution. Water is as essential for nature as love is for humanity. And when we create forms of life where we are no longer ignoring the form of how life energy wants to move, but create structures that allow it to evolve naturally, then we make violence obsolete. And so this is what I would like to end with, that we are here, that whether the world will develop into paradise, whether the upcoming collapse of this current system will lead to chaos and destruction worldwide, or whether it will lead to the emergence of a new global society based on decentralized autonomous communities, is a matter of the idea, of the information, of the dream of civilization that we have. And so let us collaborate to create and spread a new code for human life on Earth, and let us create more and more places on Earth, experimental research center, healing biotopes, where this new dream can come into life. Thank you very much.